Hello, Faith to Feet family. Welcome back. Dr. Anetta here. So, today I have a new guest. We're getting ready to have a conversation about how to have better relationships by identifying different types of personalities. My guest today is NaTasha Grimes. All right, so let me tell y'all a little bit about NaTasha and why she's going to be discussing with us how do we better navigate these relationships by identifying and understanding different personality types and traits. So, NaTasha Grimes is the CEO of Ascension Solutions, where she helps individuals optimize their personalities for personal and professional growth and development through consulting and professional development training. She's also a certified personality trainer. She has been married for 29 years. Oh, that's some personality training.
Yes.
That's on the job training.
You don't
And
talk about it.
she has two adult children and she's a former classroom teacher for over 10 years. So, once again, let me just welcome you, NaTasha, to Faith to Feet TV. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Happy
You're
to
welcome. All right, so we want to jump right in, NaTasha.
be
So,
here.
what led to you becoming interested in personality traits and personality types as far as becoming an expert? Because I would say you are an expert now in this industry and you navigate relationships so well and you do it in such a healthy way. So, give us the
Yes.
tea. How did you start doing this?
Interesting story because, I just said I was married for 29 years. So I met my husband when I was 15. So we've been together a long, long time. We'll be married 30 years. And so we were probably about 10 years into our marriage and we went to a marriage retreat. And they gave us a homework assignment. And it was to go back to our room. We had to complete this personality assessment. And back then it was, I don't know, on animals or something, like which animal did you most relate to? And we had to have these conversations around it. So that was like the first, like, wow, okay, so that's why you do whatever. So it was a little, a little bit about it. Then on his job, there was a training that he participated in. It was called True Colors. Now, this is probably at least 20 years ago. So I'm dating myself now, probably almost 20 years ago. And it was called True Colors. And I was like, wow, this is fascinating. And because I'm an educator, I'm a lifelong learner. I love to learn. I just started reading. And probably around 2 or 3 years after going to that retreat, him going to work, I discovered someone named Florence Littauer who had written a book called Personality Plus. And it was my first real content, if you would, on this subject matter. I had a little taste of it at the retreat or whatever. And so I started consuming everything that she had. And she's passed away in the last, I think it was 2020, she passed away. She was like in her 80s. But she then offered a training to become a certified personality trainer under her teachings, because she and her husband, they wrote it together and talked about how personality impacted relationships and all of that. And so fast forward, I did all of the certification work, flew to Tennessee. My husband's like, okay, you want to do this? All right. Because it was so intriguing, because my husband and I are so different and our personalities, we were clashing. I'm gonna be honest, those first few years of marriage, it was hard. It was really hard because it was one thing to date, and we got married young. I was only 20 years old. And so we didn't know what we were doing. So I was then grasping for what could help us. And I realized so much of why we were butting heads. One, we were immature, but we were so different and opposite in personalities. And so once we both started having those light bulb moments, it was a game changer. So that's how I got started. It was really from going to a marriage retreat.
Oh, wow. That's amazing because I think of the phrase opposites attract, but they never tell us how to handle those opposites and those differences that we might have with one another that we're in relationship with. So the fact that you took the initiative to become certified as a personality trainer and you will be married for 30 years in July, you said?
Well, next year will be 30 years, next
Next
March.
next year for 30 years, that lets us know how important it is to get personality traits down so we
Yeah,
can better navigate these relationships in a more healthy way. So
absolutely.
yeah, that speaks to the longevity. All right, so NaTasha, what would you consider to be some basics that we need to get in this out of this conversation as it relates to people understanding themselves better, as well as those that they're in relationship with. So I guess that's a two-part
Yeah.
question. Like, how do
Well,
we understand ourselves and others?
so it's interesting. If we really observe people, and I love to watch people, that was another reason why I started getting intrigued. Most of us operate in our extremes. We are extremely something or another, oftentimes, but we don't see it in ourselves. Usually it's when someone else tells you or shares with you that, well, you're really loud or you're really this, that, and the other. If you observe people, you really can then understand who they are just by watching them. And so, by understanding most of us navigate ourselves and living in the extremes, for me, it was a way I needed to be self-aware. Like, who am I and how do I show up to others? And so that is a launching pad for growth. I'm all about growth. So part of what I do is teach people to understand who you are, not to just identify weaknesses, because we all have those, but I see it as a way to identify who I am, because I can grow me. I don't like to hear people say, well, this is just how I am and this is just me and you just got to deal with it. Well, that just lets me know you put a period where there should have been a comma, because you should say, well, this is how I am, however, or but, because we should recognize that there are some things that we need to grow in. And so when you're in a relationship with someone, I'm not seeking to just be understood. I'm seeking to understand. So if we stop focusing on just seeking to be understood and understand the other person. So with my husband, I'm very observant, right? And so now that I know he is a very outgoing person. Fun, is a need of his. Like, you really have needs based on your personality. I have a need to get things done. And I can be extreme about that because I don't even like to nap. I feel like I need to constantly do. So if you watch people, you will recognize who they are simply because they're showing you all the time visible cues. My daughter, she very much has to have fun. She's a people person. She will strike up a conversation with a perfect stranger. When you see people like that, you recognize, and I teach the terms and all that. We don't need to get into all that tonight. But from that, that's how I know how to engage with them. I'm not seeking for them to change. I don't want them to be anything other than who they are. They're different, not wrong. I used to think my husband was wrong. I was like, that's not right. You're not supposed to do it that way. I learned, and I know now he's not wrong, just different. People aren't wrong. They're just different. And so if we stop focusing on how do I change the other person, how do I grow me and interact with you in a way that best suits you, then that's where your relationships can really thrive, because it's not about you anymore. You're making it more about the other person.
Oh, that's so healthy and that's so good for our growth in any relationship. But I hear you keep talking about your marriage, and you said something that we've been talking about in my community called Wives Council. And you said we have our personalities are our needs are based on our personalities. And it's important for us to be able to understand those personalities so we can communicate those needs to our spouses.
Yes.
And when you say we don't need to change our spouses, we just need to better observe them so we can gain a better understanding.
Because you can't change people.
No.
How many people have you? I mean, I don't care how many you have tried to change. Tell me how many you changed.
Right.
You haven't personally, you may have, especially with kids, we may have caused them to modify behavior, but deep down, we are that person. We are wired that way. We are wired with who we are in our DNA. We are God made, right?
Absolutely.
So I can try to change my husband, but that's like trying to take him out of being who he is and who God created him to be. So he is naturally an outgoing person. I had students who were naturally a certain way. And I know we're going to talk about students and children in a moment. But if you think about the fact that you cannot change people, you are the common denominator in every relationship. So guess what? You show up in every one of these relationships. So you are the person you need to focus on, not everybody else.
Okay, that's good, because you're telling us to grow you, level up your self-awareness, observe the person that you're in relationship with. Yeah, all of those are good tools. So those are our basics. We have to have some self-awareness. We have to be willing to observe people. And when you say extreme, can you give me an example? Like, what do you mean about being extreme?
So extreme could be, I could be a natural born leader, which I am. I'm a natural born person who will take charge and excel in emergencies. That's a strength.
Mm-hmm.
Strengths paired to extremes become a weakness. So if I take that same strength and I'm now bossy and I'm going to come in, I'm going to tell you what you should do and how you should do it, that is taking my strength of being a leader, of being able to take on emergencies. And now I've become a dictator. If I'm someone who is an outgoing personality, I like to have fun, I like to talk, but you dominate the conversation. You
Mm-hmm.
don't know when you really should be quiet and listen, or you're too loud for that moment. That's when you're in extremes. That's when you're like, you know what? Yes, this is who I am, but that's not a strength. I've now taken my strength and it's become a weakness, because being bossy is not a strength. Being
Right.
able to lead is a strength.
Right. Being able to lead is a strength. That was a perfect example for me and my audience. Thank you so much for that.
Mhm.
So, when you talk about these tools and these skills, will they transcend other relationships? Because I know we spend a little time right there on marriage, but will they transcend other relationships, like our work relationships with our colleagues, or if we have some students that are watching, like with their teachers or professors?
Absolutely, absolutely. So let me give you the teacher example, right? So for me, after I learned this, I was probably about in my third or fourth year of teaching, and it was a game changer because I had little people in my class who had personalities like mine, which means they were a very strong personality. And it was kind of like, okay, we're butting heads because you want to run the classroom. And I'm like, no, that's my job. Or
Mm-hmm.
you had those little class clowns, right? And so all of those little things are really personality traits. When I understood that, I was able to build connections with my students, have authentic relationships. And as a result, I could get outcomes that other teachers couldn't. And they didn't understand, well, why isn't Miss Grimes said, you know, you got the same student that I had, and why are you having such success? Well, it was because, and I call it my seventh sense. You know, Holy Spirit is my sixth sense. I call
Mm-hmm.
my understanding of personality my seventh sense. And
I
that
would too.
because I can navigate a room based on just observing people, because again, there are visible cues that people leave us all the time. So even in my workplace, I had a situation, with a coworker who was extremely sensitive. It didn't matter. I could say, you look great every day. She would internalize it. Is something wrong? Well, I learned immediately, well, that was based on her personality, right? Because her personality, and I'm not going to get into all the details, but it was, one where they are much more sensitive. Things had to be perfect in her mind, or if it's going to be done, it has to be done just right. So she would overanalyze. All of those things are different interactions. If you're a waitress, if you can observe the fact that there are some customers who want to have conversations, they're the talkers, like my husband and daughter, engage all day. Whereas I'm going to come in, what's on the menu?
Mm-hmm.
You adjust accordingly, you're going to have a lot more success. So I've learned to adjust accordingly. And it's definitely not just with my husband and children. It wasn't just as a teacher. It's with my friends. It's with my siblings. It's with my, clients, different business owners want different things. Some of them want charts, graphs. Others like, just, I don't even need an appointment. Just pick up the phone and call me. I can pivot based on who they are. And I just feel like that's been one of my strengths over the years that have allowed me to navigate so many different situations with different types of people.
Mm-hmm. That adaptability, NaTasha, I can see how that would be so beneficial to all of us to have in our toolkits for
Yeah.
navigating relationships and navigating life. Because you went from your marriage, an adult, to navigating your classroom and little personalities.
Yes.
Because little personalities, just because they're little, doesn't mean they don't have a personality. And it doesn't mean that you don't have to treat them as a person, right? So I
Mhm.
really love how you're not only talking to marriages, you're speaking to teachers in classrooms, but you're also speaking to parents on how to, navigate their homes and how to parent well. And
Yes.
I'm enjoying the conversation. We're learning a lot. And again, you're enhancing our arsenal. So we appreciate that.
Love it. Love it.
Okay, so going back to these relationships that mean a lot on this channel, marriage and parenting.
Okay.
Why, or can you tell me how understanding those different personalities in marriage and in parenting is helpful and can lead to a healthier relationship with our spouses and with our children? Like, give me an example of how.
Yeah. So I'll start with the marriage first. I
Okay.
recognized once I really understood my husband's personality, fun was a need for him. I don't need fun. I can take it or leave it because my idea of fun was not like fun is for him. Like he needs that on a job. He needs that in a marriage. He needs wherever he goes, he's going to be the life of the party. He's going to show up in the
Mhm.
room. And I always wanted to like, okay, you just we don't need all that, right?
Right.
But it was who he is. And then there is also the component of him that just likes to chill, relax, where I'm always constantly wanting to do. So that kind of along with me understanding myself, it helped me understand him. Just like if you've ever done his needs, her needs, or five love languages, you're not you're not engaging with that person based on your love language necessarily or your need. It's what's theirs. So it's the
Mhm.
same thing with personality. With parenting, it made my parenting, I'm not going to say, I should say it's easier, but parenting is still hard. But if
Mhm.
you don't have this tool of understanding your children's personality, I really believe your job is being made a lot harder than it needs to be because it answers the questions of why behind the behavior. So often we don't understand that there is a why typically behind it. And so, for example, my son, he's an adult now, but as a child, he was very sensitive. Like he wears his heart on his sleeve. He never wanted anyone to be hurt. So I remember he was very athletic and he was on a basketball team. I think it was like sixth grade. And I remember him selecting this little boy to be on his team because he said, Mom, I wanted him to win. He said, I didn't care if I lost. I wanted him to win because the parents were coming. I think he had like a visual impairment or something or some sort of disability. And so recognizing for my son that I cannot come to him as strong as I could with my daughter who would just, let everything roll off of her back. So if you've got one child that's more sensitive or they are a lot more closed, like they don't trust as much or they get hurt easily. I remember he was in fifth grade and a teacher said something that hurt his feelings. He will tell you about it to this day.
Mhm.
Whereas my daughter, she's, outgoing. She has all these friends. All of those things matter when you're talking about parenting them because you want to raise them according to who they are. Then also it helps me guide and direct them into what's best for them. My
Mhm.
daughter's job is great for her because she gets to talk. She gets to host panels. She gets to engage with people all day. Whereas my son would never want that. So it helped me guide her into what's going to be better for you in
Mhm.
your, career even. So even as your children are growing up, sometimes we want to force them into what we think they should be or what they should be doing. But if you're not considering their personality, you're not considering that God, he designed them, their
Yes.
personalities with purpose, and their personality will help them fulfill their purpose.
Hmm. That's so good, NaTasha, because as you talk about the children portion, the parenting, I think about my own daughters. My husband and I have twin daughters, and it's so important because my husband has his own personality. I have my own personality, and I always think about, they are definitely different from me, even though they're girls, and I have a twin sister, and they're twins, and I would think, oh, we're going to relate so much and we're going to be the same. We are so different. It's so important that I understood that a while ago, a long time ago, about understanding their personalities. Because I think about when we think about David and
Mhm.
fighting Goliath, and you think about Saul saying, hey, put on my armor. And it's like we will, as parents, sometimes solve our children,
Yes.
give our children our armor and make them wear our armor. And it's like, no, you still have to not do that to them. And even if you do it to them, give them the space to say, no, I can't wear that. I don't want to wear that. So I'm even wondering, how do we even navigate allowing them the space when you say your daughter is one that's more talkative? How did you create that environment or cultivate that environment where you allowed her the space to give her opinion? Because it sounds like she probably did share her in a respectful way.
Yeah. And here's the thing with her, hers was more like her dad with being the fun. Like for me, I grew up being very much wanting to be in charge, to take charge, the born leader. So I was the youngest, but I was probably perceived to be the loudest because I'm going to tell you, this is what you need to do, that, and the other. And so I gave them space in that I allowed them to not have to do it my way. You know, I knew she needed to have fun. So I had to give her time to play, to have fun. Like, you know, I couldn't just have her come home from school and you go straight to doing work. She needed some fun. Mm-hmm. My son, he needed some time to get his emotions out because he is a lot more sensitive. He needed to share, and I need to be able to be quiet and listen because I want to just start. Here's what you should do. Do this, do this, do this, and let's just fix it. And that doesn't work with different personalities. So I think for me, understanding that about them and allowing them to be who they are and not many versions of who I thought they should be, because otherwise they end up being counterfeit versions of who God created them to be. And we have so many people who were forced to not be themselves. You know, my husband doesn't mind me telling the story. He got in trouble a lot as a kid because he was, you know, always that playful one. He actually got held back in first grade because they said he wasn't socially ready, not realizing that was really part of his personality. He was very bright. It was just he wanted attention. So if you don't recognize those little things about your children, your spouse, yourself, you don't understand the why behind the behavior. And then you'll make assumptions based on what you think versus who they really are. And then the Bible tells us, one of the scriptures when I teach this in faith-based settings is Romans 12:18. It says, you know, as far as it depends on you to live at peace with all men or with others. So that means it comes back to me. I cannot try to make my husband or my children be anything other than who they are. So what am I going to do to keep peace, to have peace? Well, let me grow myself. Let me have self-awareness. Let me seek to understand others. That's going to allow me, as far as it depends on me, to live at peace with all men or with others.
You keep hitting us with the basics. I'm going to remind them at the end, but again, the basics: observation, grow myself, and know their why.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's so good. That's so good. I appreciate that. Those were great examples. So you are a certified personality trainer, not just a teacher or an educator, a certified personality trainer. As someone who has already sharpened and developed these skills in personality, I want to swing it back to a relationship that I think is tricky. I think those adult sibling relationships can be a little tricky to navigate and to maneuver and to manage. So based on your skills, how do you think we can better manage those adult sibling relationships?
Yeah, I don't think it's too different from how you manage most relationships, other than there is that, you know, that component where it's family, right? You got to make sure that you don't, you know, break the family ties, but they have their unique personalities just like you do. And so if you identify that, it'll help you know how to interact and engage. So I just say, still look at the visible cues. And so I'm thankful that I've never given my sisters a personality assessment. And the way we teach it, the way I teach this and the way we teach it is, it's a no test needed method. So really, I can do this all day and never have to give an assessment, even though I have the formal. So for example, one of my sisters, I know she's very much, she needs things to be just right, almost to the point of, I don't want to say perfection, but she will spend all night doing something that should have taken 30 minutes. Well, I know if I ask her, you know, she's a seamstress and she can sew, I got to give her plenty of time because she's going to take so much time to make sure. And I'm just like, look, we just need to get this done. Let's get this done. And so we're very different in that. But I have another sibling where we're very similar. And it makes sense as to why we butted heads so often as children, because we were two very strong-willed individuals. So if you can figure out, again, who they are and how they're wired, you're not even going to tell them what you're doing. I've never told my sister that I know you're more sensitive. I know this about you, that I've got to give you more time because you're probably going to be late with it because you're going to take too much time trying to make it perfect. I've just adjusted me accordingly. So that same, as far as it depends on you, It applies to all. Like, it doesn't matter the relationship, but I think it gives you a place of, where do I pause to evaluate me? Like, when they give you feedback. One of the things one of my sisters told me, and I never knew this until she shared, she said, you don't know how many times I've left your presence in tears, broken. And I said, what? Because I was in my extremes. I was in that bossy versus leader. It's great when I would lead and help the family, but me saying, well, that just doesn't make sense. And that's just stupid. Because we will say things like that to a sibling. And even as an adult, I was doing that because in my mind, I'm so logical, practical, black and white. I didn't realize I can't talk to her that way. I shouldn't talk to anyone that way, but especially her, because she does take things to heart. She is a lot more sensitive. Whereas my other sister, we would have gone back and forth. She would have been like, okay, well, this. So you understand who you are, you adjust you, but I don't think it's really a whole lot you have to do different when it's the siblings, other than, be okay with that. It may not look like you want it to look. I don't think sibling relationships, we want them to be a certain way. And it's just not always going to be the case, because you can't change that person. Because what I recognize is growth isn't as important to everybody else as it is to me. So I can't have expectations of someone to be at my level because they have not taken the time to invest in their growth. So I got to meet them where they are. And so because I have more of an understanding, my expectations are real different. So I'm a lot less frustrated because I don't expect certain things of her, one, because of her personality, but two, outside of that, I know the growth levels are different.
Oh, and that's so wise. That sounds like wisdom along with your personality certification. That's really good. I really
life experience. Yes.
Yeah, because those relationships sometimes they do seem a little bit tricky. Those, especially because, as you said earlier, those are the ties that you really don't want to cut. And so, but it's the same method. It's the same tools that you're using. And that's good to hear, because it doesn't seem like it's a task that's, unreachable, or a goal that's unreachable, because you're still observing them, you're observing their cues, and you're growing yourself, and you're not putting an expectation on someone that may not have that same expectation for growth that you do. So that's really good. That's really good. Okay, so when it comes to your training in personality types and traits, which relationship, if you just had to name one, which relationship do you think has benefited the most by you understanding what you know about yourself and other people's personalities?
Oh, without a doubt, my marriage. Without a doubt. One, because of how long we've been together. We've been together since I was 15 years old. And what I thought was cute about his personality, once we got married and we were living together, that wasn't cute anymore. To be as playful, because I was like, you play too much. Well, it was funny then. It wasn't funny as, someone living with him, or, you always spur the moment and spontaneous. Well, that was frustrating when we were married initially, but now I understand it. So 100%. And we've shared many times, we've done a lot of premarital coaching and, supporting couples who are young in their marriage and in their journeys to thinking about getting married. We almost didn't make it. And I can wholeheartedly say that's why I think, I'm so thankful for my understanding of personality and Florence Literary and being introduced to her and getting certified and knowing the deep knowledge about a personality the way I do, is we wouldn't have made it because we were so opposite, and we still are. But now we see we're opposite, where we complement one another. I don't like to say balance. I think we complement one another because, we both understand that I'm not going to be anything other than the NaTasha that God wired me to be. But where I'm a 2, I can become a 3 or 4. So no, I'm not very spontaneous. I'm very planned, organized, and driven and goal oriented, not as people oriented. But there are times when I got to move the needle. And so because of that, my marriage has benefited the most by far. And he would say the same, because, he understands it as well as I do. He just didn't take time to get the certification because that's not fun. It wasn't fun to get certified. He took it, but he understands it. And so because we both do, I think that's what also makes it work so well.
Oh, that's so good. And to hear again, that sounds like a strength based marriage. You know your strengths when you say that wasn't fun for him, and you know his strengths as
Mhm.
well as his weaknesses, and vice versa. So,
Absolutely.
again, that sounds so good. It sounds so encouraging because we do sometimes get into marriages and we feel like, man, like, first of all, everybody knows you can't change a person, but what can I do with this person? And so you've told us over and over again the two
Mhm.
keys in being successful in navigating relationships and doing it in a healthy way. So
Mhm.
I want to talk about this last relationship, NaTasha, your relationship with God. So how do you think your relationship with God and your personality go hand in hand? Because I keep hearing you say how God has wired you, how God has wired other people. And growing up, I feel like there are different worship styles based on what type of church you go to. You might go to Pentecostal, you may go to Baptist, whatever. But those were the churches you went to probably because your parents took you there. But when you become an adult, you choose those spaces where you want to worship in on your own. So
Mhm.
how do you think your personality is impacted, or how God intertwines your personality with the way you relationship with him?
Yeah, so we don't have time to get into it today, but I have part of my training is understanding your spiritual personality. And we each have a spiritual personality and how we show up to God and how we engage and interact with God. And so for me, that's been helpful because I don't have to be as energetic. I can be myself, which, the way I receive God and the way I worship God may not look like someone else. And that's okay. But I think for me, it's been mostly that it allows me to know how to pray about areas of, Lord, I need help. Like this is a problem with me. So it gives me that self-awareness, but I can specifically pray about certain things because Lord, help me not to come across being as brash and as bossy. Because when I understood that part of my weaknesses of my personality was a hindrance and a stumbling block to others, Lord, I don't want it to be that. So I use it first as a way for me to develop personally, to have specific prayers about how I can be the best version of myself. I don't have to go out here and try to, Lord, I'm not praying about, make me more, energetic, and because that's not me. But Lord, how do I use my strength of being a leader? How do I use my strength of wanting to get things done? How do I use that? So Lord, help me increase my strengths in the way that pleases you. Help me to minimize the weaknesses that's going to displease you. Then show me, Lord, other people. Show me where there are areas that I can pray for. So my husband, I know exactly where to pray. Help him, Lord, to be more structured, to be more organized. That's not natural for him, God. Help me to, help him to be better in those areas. So it allows me to have that prayer life that's more focused. It allows me to know that my assignment, I'm wired for that. What I do, I'm going to do it, the way God chose for me to do it, not show up like anybody else, to be my authentic self and be okay with that. But also to know that how he receives me, I don't have to show up and be like anyone else, even in worship. And you mentioned, depending on the church, there was an expectation that if you didn't do this, if you weren't loud with your praise, then you're not praising God. Well, really? Who says who? Because God didn't create me to be a loud person that you're going to hear me before you see me. That's not me. That's some people. Some people are great on stage. I'm great in different ways. I'm better facilitating a small group. I'm better doing this. Give my husband a microphone, my daughter a microphone. They will entertain you all night. That's not me, and that's okay. So it allowed me also to be accepting of who I am. And I pray that people learn and understand their personality and how they're wired so you can love you the way God created you, but also, okay, Lord, let me use that as a way for me to grow and be the best version of me.
So good. So good. Like, so good. That's mic drop moment. Uh, NaTasha, that's so good because that's freedom. You
Yeah,
just open the door for freedom for so many people that are watching. I won't say just women. Hopefully there are men watching too, but
yeah,
that's freedom in that, because how many times we go to church or church services and somebody might be, speaking in tongues, or somebody might be, moving all around the church, and you're more reserved in your worship.
yes.
I just believe that you've set people free with understanding that, first of all, it starts with my prayer life. I'm talking to God about me. I'm not
Yes.
talking to God about NaTasha and how I wish NaTasha wouldn't talk so much or wouldn't lead or be so ambitious. I'm
Yeah.
talking to God about me and showing me how to show up as the best me that I can be. And
Yes.
then when you talked about the authenticity, showing up as your authentic self, God
Mhm.
is not going to teach you how to be a better Anetta or teach Anetta how to be a better NaTasha. He's
Mhm.
going to keep developing those skills inside of you that he placed down on the inside of you from the very
Yeah.
beginning. So good. So good. I so love that. I mean, seriously, that's freedom. That's freedom.
It is. It was free from. That's why I'm so passionate about, sharing about, and I don't get caught up in like tasks and assessments and all that. It is a growth tool. It is a way to have better relationships. That's all I really want to do with this, is to help people be better, be the best version of you. But first you got to locate you. You can't be the better you if you don't even know who you are. And I run into so many people that they don't even know, and because life has beat them up, or they, and this is a whole nother topic, masked, because life has caused them to be someone other than the version of themselves that God created them. It could be, relationships. It could be a parent didn't let you, be the outgoing person that you are. So
Mhm.
now you become such reserved, you really think that's you, and
Mhm.
it's not. And then you realize when you start peeling back the layers, I say go all the way back to childhood. If you didn't have any restrictions, who are you? Who
Mhm.
are you? Well, I was always, the one that wanted to, take charge, get some things done. But other people, they don't realize that. So it is freeing. It is very freeing.
Mm-hmm. Oh, this was an amazing conversation, but I can't let you leave without one more question, or at least, can you give us some advice? Give the Faith to Feed family advice on better navigating relationships so they can do relationships in a more healthy way.
Teacher and me wants to go to math. We talked about common denominators when we taught math. Well, you are the common denominator in every relationship. I don't care if it's a relationship on your job, with your friends, with your spouse, with your children. You take you everywhere you go. You take you in every relationship, right? So you have to focus, first of all, on understanding who I am. What are my areas of strength? Bring that, leverage your strengths, but don't focus so much on other people. We want to put the onus on other people to change you, grow to be the best you. Stop worrying about everybody else, because if you bring you, the best version of you, you're going to see those relationships thrive. You're going to see you be able to excel. I believe I've been able to do things even with career and having any success, whether it be with impacting someone's life or their marriage. It's because, first of all, I got to focus on me, but then I help you understand, be the best you. You have a unique DNA, unique, distinct natural abilities that God gave you. Focus on that, because you're going to bring that into every relationship.
Amen. So good. This was a great conversation, NaTasha. I love that you spent some time with the Faith to Feed family today. You unpacked that thing, but I hear the spirit of a part too when you said that
Mm,
spiritual personality. What?
it is.
But we definitely enjoy everything that you shared, all the tools, the common denominator. We keep hearing that over and over. It's us. We got to grow us up. We got to level up. We got to develop that self awareness. We got to observe. We got to observe the social cues. We so appreciate all that you delivered today. Like, you really delivered like none other. So I appreciate everything that you shared today, NaTasha.
Thank you for having me. So excited to be here. Thank you.
You are so welcome. So where can we find you, NaTasha? Where can we get these assessments? Because you were naming stuff, you were like ones, twos, and threes. I know it's more to these.
Well, I don't give out the assessments, but you can find me at ascensionsolutions.online, and I'll share my IG, but my IG also is Ascension Solutions. Because what people often do is they take an assessment or they take something and they misuse it. So I don't want you to use it as a tool or a label. I really want you to use information to grow. And so, yeah, you can find me at Ascension Solutions if you go on IG or Facebook as well.
All right. And you can connect with NaTasha because I'm going to list everything in the description box. So you'll still be able to see it in the description box. So again, I want to thank you one more time, NaTasha, for being on with us today. I really enjoyed the conversation. I didn't just enjoy it, I was educated as well as empowered. So thank you so much for that.
Thank
And
you.
you all, if you need a transition advisor, you're making a transition either in womanhood, marriage, or motherhood, I am your transition advisor, helping you establish your walk in motherhood, womanhood, and marriage without compromising your values, your vision, or your voice. All right. So that's it for today, Faith to Feet family. Peace.